Since it is 6 o'clock, a quorum of us is present, so I'm going to call the March 4th, 2025 meeting of the Conservation Commission to order. The first order of business is just approval of meeting minutes from February 18th on our last meeting.
So moved.
Any discussion?
Second.
No second. All those in favor by roll call?
Clock eye.
Bjork and I.
Keenan, aye. Gentilucci, aye.
And Dan's an aye, so those are approved. All right, and then the big item, which I think most of you are here for, is the Concom is proposing a wetlands bylaw for this upcoming town meeting. The purpose of the bylaw mostly is to further protect our natural resources in town. And, you know, we primarily work off of the state's Wetland Protection Act as it is now, so that's not going away. We are kind of supplementing that with some additional information, some additional regulation, and some additional protections to make sure that, you know, future development kind of helps to protect our natural resources, whether they be wildlife or wetlands, you know, kind of for our future generations and in perpetuity. So the main gist of our bylaw, our existing jurisdiction under the state's Wetlands Protection Act, or we call WPA, extends 100 feet out from the majority of wetlands. So we review and permit any kind of what we call an alteration, anything that will cause a disturbance, you know, putting a shovel in the ground or change an area in whatever way from either within the wetland or 100 feet out from its borders. And so our wetlands bylaw, you know, still has that 100-foot buffer zone is what it's called from the edge and out. But we are proposing a 25-foot no disturb. So the first 25 feet from the edge of a wetland, you know, we are kind of calling kind of a protected resource area. So it has protections as if it was kind of like a wetland itself. There is an allowance for variances, you know, on a case-by-case basis. And I think it's important to note that this bylaw is not retroactive. So it's only on things moving forward. You know, if you are on a property with an existing lawn that goes up to the wetland edge, you know, we are not making you pull that back. If you were to propose something in front of us, you know, it may be a topic of discussion in terms of mitigation, depending on what you're proposing, if you're doing a large addition or, you know, putting a lot of impervious surfaces, but we will not just be kind of, you know, going to property. It's not, you know, thinking of these things, it's not until there's an application in front of us, that this bylaw comes into play. Or an activity happens once this is passed, that this bylaw comes into play. We also added that 100-foot buffer zone to other resource areas that aren't protected under the Wetlands Protection Act, such as vernal pools, isolated wetlands, so they're not bordering on streams, but they're still technically a wetland themselves. And the FEMA floodplain. So those are, the majority of things are regulated under the state in terms of their resource area, but they don't have a buffer zone. And now that they would have a buffer zone under this bylaw. So it would allow us to kind of review those applications and, you know, put proper conditions upon them to ensure that the resources that they're adjacent to or might be impacting, you know, the work is done in a proactive and sustainable manner, and there's no negative impact during the project or afterwards. I think those are the biggest things. You know, we are adding protection of vernal pools, which is kind of another thing on our agenda tonight. They're very important kind of throughout the state. You know, those obligate vernal pool species that come up in the spring and they migrate. You know, those pools are seasonal. They only happen in the spring. So we want to protect those as much as we can. You know, a lot of change is happening at the state level, but it comes at a much slower rate. So this is our ability to kind of, you know, not necessarily speed it up, but speed it up, and kind of keep up with the wetland science and environmental science as things evolve and things change a little bit more easily. is there anything else we wanna add on just the background? Before we take
You hit all the
questions?
highlights,
Okay.
yeah, that was good.
You might touch on the ponds.
Yes, so we did keep, the Wetlands Protection Act does have a lot of, or not a lot of, but does have some exemptions. We are keeping the agricultural exemptions, so there's no change to existing agricultural exemptions. That was very important to us. Thank you, Skip. Anything else we wanna add? Otherwise, I think we are here to answer your questions. We did receive some, I'm not sure how many are here, through the portal. One of them was about mainly the definition within alteration, about, things within the water, I think as they pertain to docks and swimming, which was a very good point. To us, those things, don't cause or don't have a negative, like swimming isn't something that we would stop. So the definition is triggered when you do an activity. So if someone were to put in a new dock on Demon Pond, on Turkey Hill Pond, on any of the ponds, that already requires a permit from us, so that would still remain the same. Any existing docks, there's no change, because they're existing, we are not retroactive. And I think, I don't wanna speak for all of us, but I think all of us, do find recreation very important. And it's not something that would be stopped in the future, especially on ponds that are their main purpose, or one of their main purposes is recreation, especially for those residents. But the goal of that definition of alter was no way to limit existing recreational activities on those ponds, so that would have no impact on those. So I know that was a big on some of the associations, the concern. Another one came up for weed treatments. It would be the same process as it is now. We brought up how we just did an amendment to the Demon Pond one, because of better science, better chemical. We view that as positive. You're controlling invasives, that's great. It would in no way kind of really have, this bylaw wouldn't have a negative impact upon it, especially when the overall net benefit is positive. And I think those were we had a general question, just kind of why was this necessary, especially when we already have so much DCR land. DCR and DEP, which we work under DEP, are fundamentally different with their regulations, and DCR actually relies on DEP for enforcement. So our guidelines could only better DCR's ability to keep our waterways, our public drinking water, etc., clean and healthy. But yeah, it's, separate regulations that they work under. DCR is mostly concerned with the watershed protection, which is important, but this is kind of under the guise of the Wetlands Protection Act kind of extension of its local aspect of it. So if you have questions, please feel free, introduce yourself with your address, and we're here to answer. Okay, yes, I'll go right here first.
Sandy Lawton, Maple Spring Drive. Our property has deeded a dock, but we do not have one at this time because we don't have a boat. So the process for us would be the same,
Correct.
an application thing, but it hasn't made it more difficult because it's not in at this time.
I would say and anyone feel free to chime in. I don't think it will make it more difficult. It might give us something just to make sure that you are, if you're refueling, making sure it's done in a proper way, which we do under the WPA. It would, if we enact this bylaw, technically would require one of those variances. But personally as one commissioner, I wouldn't view it any differently, considering it's existing, assuming it's existingly is disturbed up to the shoreline too. That kind of goes hand in hand. Any other thoughts on that one?
I agree.
There's a hand up on Zoom. George Farrington. You should be able to unmute. Maybe. He's thinking about it.
Yep, there you go.
George Farrington, 21 Shoreland Drive. Question about the vernal pools. Do we have a list of known vernal pools in town, and will there be anything to identify more?
Yes. So the definition of vernal pool within our bylaw is not just existing certified vernal pools, which are done through a process. It's mostly a citizen science project process that the public can do or the Concom can do. But our definition within this bylaw is we give it a certifiable vernal pool. So it doesn't have to be officially state recognized, but it has to meet the qualifications of a vernal pool. So there's always an ability to add more. But the NHESP or Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program has a map that shows all certified and potential vernal pools, but that doesn't mean that that's all of them. They kind of just use those based on aerial imaging, kind of small bodies of water and what they can put together, but it's very important to note, I think, that it's certifiable, not necessarily just certified vernal pools. Which is very common in other bylaws too. Yes.
Bill Brazo, Maple Spring Drive. How would this affect new installation or repairs for septic systems? Would this add regulation to it?
So in terms of the compliance with Title V, so that would still remain with Board of Health. What the commission just looks at is the physical construction, so digging. So already if you were to replace, you need a permit from us if you're within that 100-foot buffer zone. And especially if you're replacing a septic, I think we very much take that into consideration, that there are limitations on your lot size, etc. Public health kind of comes first. And it's again, kind of a net benefit to the wetlands that if you have a functioning septic system, we'd rather have that. Any other thoughts on that one? But yeah, we mainly look at when the work is being done, making sure that you have proper erosion controls, essentially. But the approval of the septic comes from Board of Health. Yes.
Hi, Lindsay Moss, 119 Brittenell Drive. You say it's not retroactive. How does this apply to homes or developments that have been approved but not yet built? Lawns haven't been seeded, etc.
So anything that has an existing permit from us is not affected by this bylaw. If they were to expire and need to get a new permit, if this bylaw were to pass, then it would become applicable. But anything in existence today,
Any permit in existence?
any permitted existence, yes, thank you.
Scott Wanico, 1 Tanglewood Circle. In terms of the docks that are existing, the ice can wreak havoc at times on the shoreline, pushing things around. Do we have to get permits and everything and variances just to simply repair what we have had there?
What do you mean by repair? Like
Well, for
replacing boards
instance,
or?
we'll have supports and, I mean, some of the older homes and everything, when they were built, part of the support was a boulder on the side of the shoreline. Mother Nature moves that rock.
Yeah.
We have to make accommodations just to, we just stabilize what we've had forever. Do we have to go through a permitting process because we're just simply fixing and maintaining what we had?
I think technically now, without a bylaw, I think you would already need a permit, depending on what you're doing. If you're disturbing any soil, technically, you need a permit for that. So, even without the bylaw, it's an alteration or replacement of existing if you're kind of doing a ground disturbance requires a permit. So this bylaw would follow that, yes, but it's something that would be already required technically. Does that answer that? I know it's a little tricky.
Essentially, we add bracing in.
Yep.
Like if you have an arm that comes out to support something and everything gets moved and now it starts to sag, essentially all we do is we jack it up and make the repair into the existing boulder. So we would have to get a permit to just simply replace that stabilization.
Trying to picture it. I think that's something we'd probably put eyes on to give you a definitive answer. I hate to like put you either way. I guess my recommendation is always reach out to the commission. We're not afraid of coming out and talking with you and talking through a process. Sometimes it is case by case basis where, you know, if your dock is in an imminent failure, you know, and it could pose a safety risk, there might be something that the commission can assist with in terms of, you know, lesser application or some sort of emergency depending on the nature of it. You know, if you're doing everything out of the water and there's no real ground disturbance, it's probably something that, you know, if you give us some sort of maintenance plan, yearly maintenance plan or something, we may still require a permit for, but it's something that we could issue an extensions on, so you have kind of an ongoing maintenance ability to continue to do that.
Okay. But cause like a lot of our docks, we pull out a
Yeah.
big part of it. We don't have to get a permit every year to just re-put it in. Okay.
You're good on that one. Yeah, and like replacing boards, like you don't need anything for that.
Okay.
I think it's more if you needed to replace like the footings in the bottom of the pond, things like that. You know, that we'd be more interested in looking at. Anything else you guys wanna add to that one?
But again, nothing's changed from before, for the most part.
Yeah,
I mean,
No, the bylaw wouldn't put
It's
any
not-
additional restrictions on that
right,
work,
right.
right?
yes.
Alan Winiker, 14 Mark Circle. If you've got an actually, Scott's talking about our dock. If you have a wooden dock now and you wanna replace it with an aluminum dock, do you have to go through the dock right now has a permit?
Mhm.
Do I have to go and do another permit to replace the wooden one with a metal one?
Are you replacing the footings too?
There's
The
really
footing
not
is just a
footings in
It's
plate.
not really footings?
Plate that just sits on top of the bottom of the pond.
There's no digging.
No digging involved.
Maybe just a notification.
Essentially, it's just a foot, like a lot of the aluminum ones now. We
Mhm.
just did it with wood way back.
Yeah,
It's just a pad, a wooden pad.
Yep.
That the foot sits on,
yeah,
that just goes down to the bottom and just rests on the bottom.
Yeah.
And then we just sit the dock on top.
I think it's something that wouldn't require a formal permit for. But it might be something that we need to, I don't think we've ever seen a dock permit, this iteration of the commission, which is another thing, so it's something to think about on both levels. But it might be good for paperwork reasons for both you and us, for us to, you know, have discussed it and at least offer you something to say that you came to us, there's no adverse impact, you know, therefore, you know, this has been approved, you know, administratively at the very least. But a change in material, as long as it's the same, sounds like wouldn't need an official permit.
And as long as his footprint's still the same.
Correct, as long as you're not enlarging it, yeah.
Gonna add 50 feet to it or anything.
Yes.
Then we're in trouble.
Yeah, then we'll find you, yeah.
Bill Grazzo, Maple Spring Drive. How does this benefit the residents and who's gonna enforce these?
Sure. So in terms of enforcement, the commission is the enforcing agency, so we take in applications as we do now, review, issue a decision at a public meeting. Abutters will still be notified. Actually, one change also is that for our lesser application, abutters within 100 feet will be notified through the mail. So you'll kind of be more aware of what's going on around you. Our goal and our ultimate hope always is to get a conservation agent. We had one for a very short time. We can have someone on staff, who's available to both answer questions if someone were to call, and to go out and do inspections, et cetera, and kind of be our daily eyes on the ground. We as commissioners, and volunteers go out kind of on our nights and weekends after work and put eyes on things as best as we can. Especially we go out before things start, we do an erosion control inspection. We go out during construction and afterwards to make sure that things were built as they were approved. And how does this benefit the residents? I think our overall purpose is just to better protect our natural resources in perpetuity. A lot of this has to do with, wetlands, which both is, you think about drinking water, you think about watershed supply, but also the habitat that uses this, both aquatic organisms and non-aquatic organisms. Better flood protection for floodplain. We have a lot of older sections of town, that get inundated by stormwater, floodwater, et cetera. And this just helps us kind of put more, I hate to use the word strict, but more applicable regulations and conditions in place, and be able to better follow the updated science, both coming from the state when they can't do it in their timely manner, but also kind of our individual organizations that we kind of talk with and learn from. I think a lot of the feedback that we've gotten through both the master plan and the open space and rec plan has been it always comes back to keeping our rural character, which not necessarily that this is the purpose of that, but it preserves the natural habitat that's existing, especially within that first 25 feet. And a lot of it is preserving areas that has been scientifically proven, to be beneficial to our, overarching natural resources. So I think that's, the real benefit is for us now and also for us in the future, that we'll still have these things. Other benefits? I feel like I'm just talking.
You're doing great.
I was gonna add just one thing, Melissa, I think it likely will give us a little bit more oversight over projects that happen in town so that we can make sure the right things are happening. Those erosion signal controls are being installed, are being maintained, so those wetlands are being protected. Because our jurisdiction, it is expanded a bit with the bylaw. While the buffer zone exists now through the state regulations, we have jurisdiction through that. But we're adding jurisdiction through additional buffer zones to floodplains, bordering in isolated vernal pools, things like that. So it will give us a little bit more control over making sure that work is getting done the right way.
For sure. Yes.
Are we keeping extra eyes on developers? We've got a lot of stuff going on in town.
I think, one of our goals with this is the bylaw then comes with regulations, which our goal is to further kind of outline what our special conditions would be. Also having this bylaw and kind of expanding our purpose a little bit allows us to have a broader approach and conditionability, if that's even a word. A lot of limitations are sometimes set under permits just under the Wetlands Protection Act, in terms of things like phasing or timeline considerations, and checkpoints. And that's kind of, I think, the goal, especially because we do know we have a lot of larger projects that are happening now and in the pipeline. It can hold them more accountable because our our enforcement ability becomes localized. We can still rely on DEP when we need it, but we will have a better ability to, fine if necessary. I'll be upfront about that. But enforcement in general, we can hold to a higher standard with a local bylaw. Because we can assess a fine of $300 per day per violation, and each day is a new violation. It's not something that I think any of us would take lightly. And it's not something to be detrimental to residents, but it is something that we can keep under our hat if necessary. It also allows us to take them to court if, something just astronomical were to happen. But we can issue enforcement orders for their non-compliance with our permit conditions, which we can do now, but it really comes down to being able to lay down the hammer sometimes. Having that local edge will definitely be key. Did you have
I
something?
was just gonna add, one of the benefits is the ability to collect fees,
Oh,
application
yes.
fees too.
So to make in mind, one of the other benefits for residents is having a local bylaw also allows us to collect some local application fees, which we can, they typically be put into a revolving account that we can put back into our conservation properties, putting efforts into certifying vernal pools. If we do need to hire a specialist to, help with some sort of legal aid or enforcement, we have an ability to do that. Although to be clear, any review of permit applications as we deem necessary, the applicant does pay for. So that's still kind of the same process it is now or within planning, that peer review service. But it allows us to have a little bit more, ability to do conservation things because we don't have a budget or we're losing our minimal budget we did have. Because WPA fees can only be utilized to enforce the Wetlands Protection Act. So if we have a bylaw, we have to have a mechanism to fund things that are enforcing our bylaw as well. Yes.
No alterations in a resource area or within 25 feet. Michael Petruba, 68B Campbell Street. Will the intention of that be reviewed on a case-by-case basis? Cause I could see that 25 feet really being detrimental to existing or proposed crossings, homes potentially. We're just fitting something, I know we talked about septics earlier. You shouldn't have a septic within 25 feet, but potential grading or things like that. Is that still gonna be a similar process in terms of, like a crossing in general would have to be permitted pretty much in the same way, I would assume?
I'd say you'd have to justify it a lot more for new development. For existing, if it's an already disturbed area, then absolutely case by case, especially if it's like maintained lawn and they're putting a patio or, a small shed or something like that on a very small lot. Then that, I think is an ability for an easy way for a variance. But keeping in mind that a variance typically comes with mitigation, so you have to have offset somehow.
Right.
We're also proposing, if you're altering a wetland, you have to have 2-to-1 replication rate too.
Okay, so crossings could be permitted still.
They can still be
You said it
permitted.
would be difficult on new
That's-
development, more difficult on new development.
You'd
What if
have
there's an
to-
existing lot that you cannot access without a crossing?
Like for a subdivision or just a single lot?
I guess either.
Either. I think, right, you have to propose, some sort of benefit, you have to justify your reason for your variance. So I think it's anything usually is doable. I don't say anything would be completely prohibited until we would see it on a plan. As long as it meets those performance standards, which will come out a little bit more clearly in the regulations.
In the event, pond association wants to do a drawdown, would this affect cleaning the shoreline, raking, you know, the bottom of the pond that was exposed by the drawdown?
Just raking,
Yeah.
so, no,
I don't think it would change from
no,
before, we
No.
still need to.
no, you're good, you're good.
Okay.
You rake those invasives.
It hasn't happened yet, so.
Yes.
Earl Martens, Pleasantdale. Since you brought it up about the drawdown, who is it our who says we can or cannot do a drawdown on Demon Pond? Because that's been an issue since I've lived here.
I know that drawdowns have been permitted by Concom in other communities. Specifically about Demon Pond, I don't know if DCR gets in, that might be a regulatory question in terms of just the protection from DCR. That might be something I might have to look into a little bit, cause I don't wanna give you the wrong answer. But I do know in communities, Concom's permit drawdowns. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's giving you the okay to do it if there are other governing bodies that need to approve it. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but from what I understand, and there's people in this room that could explain it way better than me, it would save thousands of dollars in chemicals. It would save chemicals going into the water or the air. It's something we have been told time and time again we cannot do. I've never really understood the reason, a good reason why. So if you could look into that, or maybe somebody else can tell you some other things to look into.
Sure.
I would love it to not have chemicals put in the water.
You know, if I could just add to that, I'm Tom Olson, 12 Finn Pack Road. My understanding is we have tried multiple times, and it is DCR
Who's the restricted?
that has refused to allow us to do that. And I guess I'd say, in the spirit of what was just said, it'd be wonderful if our local conservation commission would advocate for us with DCR, because we just, this past spring, had big meetings with them. One concern that they've raised was us opening up the dam, the integrity of the dam and being able to close it. And they're concerned about that, which very well could be a valid point. But then we've talked about other ways of drawing it down, like siphoning, and then these other reasons come up. And a drawdown, and you've probably all seen this. I see some ponds that are annually drawn down, and they don't deal with what we deal with. And we've many times petitioned DCR. And I guess I get it about the worry about the valve on the dam not closing.
Sure.
We came up with a suggestion to bypass that. But I guess what I'm getting at is, for whatever reason, for years, DCR has said no, no, no. And we keep pushing back. And it would be nice, I mean, you guys are here for the same reason we are, the pristineness of Demon Pond and all of these places. If we could get you on board to maybe join us, or ask them, or join us at a meeting and say, what is the problem? I mean, I guess I'm asking you if you consider doing that, not now.
Yeah.
Have a meeting, but it'd be great if you guys would come out on our behalf and advocate as town officials that they would consider allowing us to do that.
Yeah, I think when you guys, talk about it next, definitely, Tamika's our lovely admin. Send her an email, whether a couple of us come to an association meeting just to get general background, or, we invite you guys to one of ours. I think it's definitely a conversation that we can have and learn more about and see what
I mean, we've
resources
even
are
had
available.
Kim Ferguson, our state rep, come to one of their meetings and try to help us out.
Yeah,
But even with her efforts, it's like,
it's no go.
but you guys live in town, and you're the commission here in town. You might be able to move the needle, I don't know.
Yeah, I like the high praise, but DCR likes their regs too, but I think we're definitely open to a conversation and
Thank
trying
you.
to see what we can do.
For exemptions, the first one, exemption A, is for, the applications and permits required by this bylaw shall not be required for work performed for normal maintenance or improvement of land and agricultural use. The way that reads, is that intended for normal maintenance for agricultural use? So doing normal maintenance on our driveway under the new bylaw, anyone who's within 100 feet of a wetland would have to file.
It's not exempt under the WPA anyways, so
It's not exempt under the WPA?
no,
I believe it is.
normal, or I guess it depends what normal maintenance.
As long as you're not widening.
Yeah, so if you're just filling a
Right.
pothole, that's one thing.
Right. Or, I mean, I would think anything you need to do to maintain a driveway, maintain a roadway not serving more than 2 homes. Other things, so that's no longer, per the new this bylaw, we would have to file with Rutland.
If you're filling a pothole, no.
I mean, I wanna
You
say you
still,
wanna
yeah,
put,
you
you wanna
still
put,
need to meet the definition of alteration, so as long as you're not altering,
okay, so if you wanna regrade or resurface a driveway, would not have to go to the board. Cause it says that all other than stated in this bylaw, the exceptions provided in the Wetlands Protection Act and regulations shall not apply. So I don't see in here where it says that maintenance of driveways, I think a couple other ones are
Yep.
Footpaths 30 inches wide within the buffer zone, things of that nature. That's no longer exempt under this.
the bylaw. So you could file a bylaw only application. So you wouldn't have to file under the state, you would just file under the bylaw.
So that would affect paths down to docks, paths around ponds. I just think I'd like to see that added to this if it was possible. I think
That's a good point.
driveways specifically, I think like the normal maintenance that's an exemption in the state regulation, I think I'd like to see it here, cause I think it's already a hassle to have to do that maintenance, never mind have to go sign up, submit to the board and have a meeting so that I can fix my driveway or whatnot. That's my 2 cents. And then I think also like,
You're with me.
the way the bylaw is written, I could be wrong, but mowing is an exemption under the, like mowing an existing lawn area is allowed under the state regulation. I don't know that it's clear here that would be
I don't
allowable.
think there's anything specific in the WPA that talks about mowing an existing area, so that's why it doesn't carry through, but again, it's not retroactive,
Yeah,
so as long as it's existing today, the use would be allowed,
Oh,
you know what I mean?
okay,
So if you were to expand the area you're mowing, if this bylaw were to pass, that would be one thing.
okay.
But if you're just, cause you can usually clearly see whether it's an aerial image or whatnot, oh, that's an area that's been maintained, okay, it's been
Okay.
maintained.
I guess I just don't know if the exemptions clarify that.
I think the fact that it's not retroactive in itself. But I totally, I get your point,
Yeah.
cause the trigger of this bylaw is a new activity.
I see.
And if someone were to make a complaint, like, and I think part of it is we're not going out to people's yards and making
Right.
sure they're mowing where they're existingly mowing. If a neighbor were to make a complaint saying, hey, I think my neighbor's mowing out there, we would invite the potential violation to a meeting, have a discussion. Part of that is looking at aerial imaging, and if the, boundary hasn't changed, I think that closes it for me. I don't know about others.
And I like that. I guess I'd be concerned, there's a board of 5 people here today. There's not the same board in
Yeah.
however many years. If the exemption is not clear, I'd just be concerned. I think it actually notes, mowing as a
like it says, mowing of lawns is not subject to jurisdiction under 310 CMR 10 in the exemptions listed under, it's in parentheses under an item under the exemptions in the state reg.
Okay,
And I guess if it's there and it's not here, makes, my natural thought was that,
Yep.
so then you can't continue mowing. Obviously agricultural, I think, has the full exemption, and that's where that first item, maintenance and improvement on agricultural land makes sense. But there's several others under the DEP standard. I'd like to see all those exemptions still.
Excuse me, do you want to say something?
yeah, it's definitely something that we can discuss.
So these are all the minor activities listed in
The minor
WPA.
activities.
Minor
And
activities
I only
within
went into a
buffer zone.
few of them, but
Oh, so not, okay, so not necessarily exemptions, but
minor activities that are exempt to
Yeah, it
the
falls under
standard.
minor activities. And actually mowing does show up in there. It notes mowing of lawns is not subject to jurisdiction under 310
Right,
CMR.
which that might be belt and suspenders for them.
Right. Could be.
But I kinda like that. I just don't wanna mow the wrong blade and get a $300 fine, that's all.
oh, are there? Thank you.
Can I keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Show us who you are. What's your name, sir?
Michael Votruba,
And are you a local resident?
68B Campbell Street.
That's in Red.
He
In
identified
Rutland,
himself.
yeah, in Rutland. Under the fees, I guess, the commission may impose reasonable fees for applicants for outside consultants. When would that be expected to be utilized typically? I feel like I haven't seen it here often. Is that just if you need a
We need a
second
peer
opinion
reviewer.
for delineation or
Yeah,
things of that nature?
so I think planning board uses it more frequently.
Yeah.
Through like Quinn Engineering, et cetera, which we usually get some benefit from their review from planning.
Yeah.
So if we needed something separate, we would do something similar to that, whether it's a wetland boundary that we weren't comfortable with doing, or a larger development.
Okay. And is any of this worded shared from the planning board? I'm just wondering if it's like similar, the fee structure and how it's paid by a consultant, or did you
Yeah,
guys
so
come up with this on?
53G is mass general law, so that's all kind of,
Okay.
yeah, so that's taken right from the state.
And then the next item was about costs related to the consultant work is paid by the applicant.
Yep. That's right from 53G.
That's right from it?
Yep.
Okay. I just saw something that said that
And it also mimics what it says in the WPA already, too.
Okay.
Yep.
okay. I guess I zoomed everything on that then, thank you.
I would just to add to Michael's comment, I know we haven't really done anything with consulting review, but I guess the one fee we do collect is like the Telegram and Gazette fee. How we collect that from the applicants and have them pay those fees directly.
Yeah.
I don't know if that kind of relates to what you said, but
Yes, no.
just an example.
Yeah.
On the, any other questions? On the, what is this? The commission shall have the authority to continue the hearing to a certain date announced at the hearing or an unspecified date for reasons stated at the hearing. The reasons may include, one of the items is, opportunity for the commission to conduct an on-site inspection with or without the applicant of the property. I would have, depending on the applicant or myself, I would have no problem having the board on the property without the owner if they have the permission. That's not the intent of this, is to have a site visit.
Just willy-nilly.
just willy-nilly?
I mean, technically, under a WPA, we are allowed, once an application is filed, we're allowed on the property within reasonable
Right, this is
hours.
before,
Yep.
oh, this is when the
This is when the
oh,
application
when
is
the
in.
application's
Yep.
filed,
So,
so you can go,
we can go.
gotcha.
But our goal has always been.
I think you guys have always been
Yeah.
good, I just,
I don't think we like going alone either. Not in certain parts of town either.
See you in the morning, yeah, okay.
okay. One of the items under permits and conditions, I'm gonna try to summarize, basically after the 21 days, you can make your decision. And then the commission also shall take into account any loss, degradation, isolation, and replacement of replication area of such protected resource areas elsewhere in the community and the watershed resulting from past activities, whether permitted, unpermitted, or exempt, and foreseeable future activities. I guess I'm just confused if I'm applying for a project and somebody across town filled a wetland, how would that affect my filing?
Sorry, I just lost my document. I think that one was talking more about, if you need to replicate and you don't have it on your property, you could do it on another as long as you have permission to. So
Okay.
it's the permit and conditions of the application you're submitting.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
so you'd be looking at the whole picture, if you're doing good things over here or have done bad things over here in the past,
Make something
in the
better.
current decision,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Is that?
Yeah, it would be, I'm trying to think of a good example, like
Yeah.
if you were doing a development on one property you own, maybe you own a property 2 doors
Adjacent,
down,
yeah.
and you're gonna do the replication on that property, cause it's a better option,
Gotcha.
then we would just consider that as part of our review and our order of conditions. And I'll kind of go vice versa, if you were to use that property for maybe staging area, but then it needs to be restabilized when the project's done, that would also be
So it's
part
considering
of
the
the
big
order.
picture on
Yeah.
the whole
But it,
filing.
but it wouldn't be, you're doing a project here and we tell you, hey, you gotta fix this issue somebody else did
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Gosh,
across
no.
town, that's not something we would do, no. We would not be allowed to do that.
Yeah, I just saw the elsewheres in the community and
Yeah.
I'm like,
Nope.
if a neighbor's doing something.
Yeah,
it
that's,
shouldn't-
that's not your problem.
Yeah, you are not held liable to your neighbors.
No.
Hi, yeah, David Dolan, Ware Road. Just to backtrack a little bit, how did all of this, what stirred this? Who beat the hornet's nest for you folks to wanna come forward with this?
I'd say we've been talking about it for at least the last 5 years.
Yep.
So it's not something new, it's not something that we've just kind of thrown together. It's, a lot of communities in Massachusetts have a local wetlands bylaw. And I think, part of it is just coming up to the times. A lot of it is, there's been a big push, we're a very resource heavy town. Brian and I and Jared have been working on the open space and rec plan, and I think it's made it very clear how many resources we have. And we also, as a board, have been struggling to condition things in a way that we think would more best protect those resources, and the enforceability of it.
So can I ask, what do you folks do for regular occupations?
I do this in another community, so I'm an agent in Southborough.
I'm a civil engineer, I've done wetlands protection work for 20+ years now.
No. You're not a biologist or a soil scientist?
I am not, no.
Okay,
Road and bridge
okay.
construction supervisor.
Yep, anybody a biologist?
I know a wildlife biologist for 21 years.
Okay.
I just play with the dirt.
Okay.
And then
You got one guy that's a biologist, and that's great. I'm just trying to figure out, so the Mass General Law, comes out of Boston, I would guess, right? And that's, that's overseen by the DEP. So they have, I would imagine, the people that drafted the original Mass General Law are biologists, soil scientists, all those, there's probably more people I can't even think of that come up with all of these parameters. So what makes you folks think it's not sufficient?
Because DEP wants to update it themselves and they haven't got around to it.
Might be a reason for that too, so. I'm just saying, I'm just looking at it like, hey, leave well enough alone as far as I'm concerned, what are we doing? Because this guy's got a million questions about how to sweep a driveway, and I'm like, what are we doing here? So, it's like, why can't we just leave it the way it is? And, going back to, trying to do something with, Demon Pond, the drawdown would be great. And I know it's not your thing, the DCR doesn't want to do it, they got their reasons, but the chemicals, you folks have to approve, right? DCR comes up here, you guys have to say, okay, let them do it. Have you guys looked at the labels on those, the MSDS, and gone through them? I have, and I'm like, wow, oh, water spiders, yep, they're not gonna like this. Crawfish, yep, they're not gonna like this. Small baby fish, they're not, and there has been fish, I've been down there this winter, there's people pulling fish out, so, but the chemicals aren't good. So, in a way, like, I know you guys trying to help, you wanna like, oh, let's do this, and it's like, it'd be really helpful if we could just do a drawdown. And again, I know the DCR thing is nuts, the last thing I remember, the local director, a couple years ago was about to retire, and he was like, we're not gonna touch any valves, we're not gonna do that ain't happening. He's been replaced, I don't know who the new person is, I believe some people from our association have contacted that individual and got nowhere. So in my own mind, that would be most beneficial to us to get away from chemicals. From Demon Pond, as you probably know, crosses, goes through Buck Brook, all the way down, out to bottom of Ware Road, over to Long Pond, on its way to the Quabbin Reservoir. 'Cause
So
we're on that side, and we're also a long way from the Quabbin Reservoir.
And I guess to your point, we can't necessarily say no to those chemicals because they meet the performance standards under the state regs.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, I hear you,
So-
in the DCR, it's your water, it's your land, they're saying it's fine with us if you put this chemical in our water, so whatever. But I think that's just it's too bad we couldn't get away from the chemicals, and that would be something you folks should help us with. And again, I know you guys have been trying to do the right thing, so has the DEP, like, I drive around town, I see new houses going, I see the DEP sign, it says, yeah, so I imagine that's some type of approval number or something. So I'm like, okay, they got that, so you folks backed up a little bit and you said, well, hey, we're finding violations or something, so I'm like, where's the DEP people, do they ever come around, do they just
So the
issue that and they walk away?
Yeah, the DEP numbers that you see, we issue those permits.
Okay, so what was so someone's putting a driveway in or something, now you're saying, hey, they're abusing that law or whatever, right? So why don't you correct what they're doing wrong instead of trying to create a new thing to add to the existing Mass General law?
So if we see a violation, we do address it. I think our ability to follow through on enforcement is limited because the state is at the end of the day, if we get nowhere, because we can't take it to court, we can't issue fines, we can send them letters all day, we can say you have to stop work, but if they don't, we have to ask the state to step in and they can decide not to.
Really, you could call the DEP and said, I think we have an issue, and they may not come?
If they don't have the bandwidth or the staff, then, they won't.
So that won't change anyhow?
Well, we would then have the ability to do more.
We wouldn't have to go to.
We wouldn't have to go to DEP.
Anyhow, my opinion is leave well enough alone and try to help us with draining our pond down once in a while would be helpful. We don't have to do it every single year, but every couple of years would be nice. And get away from chemicals and again, some of this stuff sounds a little goofy with just line of like, hey, how do you get to you can't get from here to there, and it's the guy's property, it's doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm not sure what the intentions of this are that way,
Okay.
Anyhow, thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Gwither, Finn Park Road. Curious, you want to have this bylaw like many local towns do, or many Massachusetts towns do. Do you happen to know if there are any towns in this vicinity, like Oakham, Spencer, Hubbardston, any of the Wachusett towns, do any of them have this particular bylaw in existence?
Holden has the bylaw, which our member that's missing is the Holden agent, the conservation agent. Spencer does,
We looked at over a
Yeah,
dozen
we looked-
local
we-
ones to kind of get ideas.
we compared, we tried to find as many of the local ones as possible and or communities that were similar in size or resource areas. I feel like that, I don't know, I don't think Hubbardston had one. We looked at,
Just curious.
yeah, no, absolutely. Trying to think. I have the sheet open. But that was part of our discussion and looking at what communities that were adjacent to us did.
If I may just ask a question or again, encouragement, whatever. I honestly think the people that live around the pond, live on the pond, we do a darn good job policing it and taking care of our properties. Because it's our places, where we live and whatever. And the Denman Pond Watershed Association is very proactive. We've spent hundreds and thousands of dollars on maintaining the pond. And I'm wondering whether there's any way you guys could help us with things like over at the boat ramp. You know where the debris comes from and the trash comes from and the beer cans come from and pollution comes from? People that don't even live in the pond, that have no investment in it. I know out in Hubbardston, there's big signage. And before you even put the boat in the water, you have to make sure there's no invasive weeds on the propellers. There's a hose over there with water to wash these things off. We've spent most of our money on invasive weeds that have been brought into our pond by people who don't even live on the pond. And what would be really great is if we could have the local conservation commission help us manage maybe that situation. I mean, I don't know whether it'd be possible. Signage is an issue. I know DCR said they'll put a sign up, but it's so small, nobody reads it. It says on it things like, but I don't know if there's anything more the town can do, or as a town board, you could have signage down there. If there's any way we, like Hubbardston, could have water with a hose that people, it's one thing to have a sign that says, make sure you wash off your boat, but there's no hose to wash it down with.
I think,
You know, little things like that, those kinds of things. And I'm saying this respectfully, I really do believe the people that live on that pond and around that pond and use that pond, they've got investments there and our association does a great job. But it's the people that don't have any investment or interest, that's the problem.
yeah.
And if we're all in this to preserve it, and we're all in this to keep it pristine, maybe the focus should be more on that than setting up more regulations for us who aren't doing anything really wrong anyways. If that makes sense.
It makes
And that's
sense.
not a put down at all. I guess
know.
I'm soliciting
Help.
help from our own town residents who are on the conservation board to help us with that kind of management.
Yeah, I think it totally makes sense. I think there's, an unfortunate limitation on what we can assist with as a town entity on private property. So we wouldn't be able to use any, funds or put money towards anything. But if there was something that we could do for a joint educational, outreach, that could definitely be a different conversation. Because we do open space management, but of our own owned properties, that's kind of what our mission and authority is, not necessarily private open space areas, which to your downfall, very acknowledgent of that. But I think we have been working with partnerships for like Big Night for the vernal pool migration, things like that. I think especially this iteration of the board is interested in doing. So I think if maybe at a future date we meet with the association, that would be a good conversation to have.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
Yes.
Lindsay Moss of Brittenell. I think you make a good point when you mention community outreach because it's not an isolated problem.
Right.
I live on Brittenell Drive, that's a scenic road, and when we first moved in and there was no construction, it was a beautiful, pristine dirt road. And then when construction started, that forced hundreds of cars down our road, it is filled with trash. And my husband drives his tractor up and down that road on a daily basis, picking up the trash that other people have left on that road. And so I think town-wide, and that's what you're saying you wanna do, right? You wanna protect the resources.
And I think one of our goals for the open space committee, it's just an ad hoc kind of committee right now, just to create our plan, but one of our goals is to make it a permanent committee, which may be the more applicable board than Concom itself. So I think there's some ability, outside of this bylaw to definitely have a conversation. I guess the plus is a lot of us sit on open space too as of right now, that might not always be the case. But that would be, the same.
Carol Martins on Pleasant Hill. When we were just talking about the boat ramp, that is not a privately owned, as I understand it, tell me if I'm wrong, that's not privately owned, that's a state, I was told by the town administrator, that's a state
I guess I
thing.
just mean not town owned.
I mean, if
Yeah.
there's any way you, again, could help us with the state to install a hose or whatever else to
Yeah,
keep it clean.
I think we can have a separate conversation, not to say I wanna stick to the bylaw, but I think you guys make a lot of good points and there's definitely a relationship available. Yes.
Tim Norwald, 149 Palmagussit. I'm 100% behind this bylaw, being on the planning board, but I'm speaking as a citizen now. It's been a long time coming, we need it because there's been so much development over the last 20 years that a lot of the space left in town is wetlands and wetlands property. So I think this is a great bylaw. I just had one question and then a comment. The question that I had in here that I didn't see is, if I remember right about the Concon, they have the jurisdiction, at least when they're doing their open space hearings, to if they don't believe in what was flagged, that they can ask for a second opinion. Will that be part of this bylaw?
Yes.
It is. I didn't see it in there, that's the reason why I
Yeah, so
asked. There was
that's under the fees section we talked about a little bit earlier with the 53G.
and I apologize, I
No,
was
no,
late,
you're
I
fine.
was at work.
Yep, so we do have peer review services. in there.
Okay, I just wanna make sure, cause I know at other situations when it was flagged and it didn't look right, you could come to the Concon and ask, hey, could you get a third party to go
Yeah.
out and take a look at those flags and are they correct? My comment is, I saw 25 feet in here. Knowing that we've got a lot of lands that are just wet, I guess I would ask the commission to consider a 40 or 50-foot barrier, because the reason I say that is, in Holden, one of their reasons that they put that in is because a lot of areas, when you put in lawn and you have the chemical runoff, I don't think 25 feet is enough to stop the algae blooms and such like that into perennial pools, into streams, into ponds. So my suggestion is, consider increasing that. Don't go to 100. I know I earlier thought about that, but I'd like, you gotta be fair to everybody. And I appreciate your comments back to me on Facebook about some of the other towns doing 30, 40 feet. So
Yeah.
I would suggest that the board think about a 40 or 50-foot restriction as opposed, or let me phrase that, non-disturbance area
Sure.
as opposed to 25. Other than that, I really like the bylaw. I support you guys in doing it, cause like I said, it's a long time coming and we need to get it, cause on the planning board, we've talked about wetlands to uplands for
Yeah.
a long time, because we've had lots and stuff like that, that just, you get 10 foot in for a piece of property, and then the rest of it's sitting in a pond, and I live in Palmagussit, and I've got 4 properties that have just enough to put a house on, and everything else is in the beaver pond that they own, so.
As much
That's it,
as-
I appreciate your time, thank you.
And we did talk about, which is still kind of a possibility within the regulations. We have that 25 no disturb. Some communities do a no disturb and a no structure zone. So that's something that we kind of pondered back and forth too. It doesn't quite get the lawn aspect, but at least it keeps structures a little bit farther away.
To expand on that, that was the other thing, not just the structures, but there's some houses in town that, again, this is before you guys, where the house is literally, they were given a 10 or 20 foot from the wetlands, and then they build underneath their deck a parking space for cars, and then you put a car with oil, transmission, all that stuff, and it can leach into the water, and that's a problem I see that's not only gonna continue in Rutland with the land that's left over and so much of it being close to wetlands. So again, thank you.
Yes.
I would somewhat counter that, but I think we need to balance the use of land with the restricted areas, and I think 25's, I'd like to see more than 40, I'd like to see less than 25, but at a certain point, to me, I know it's not, and probably wouldn't hold up in court, but feels like a land taking at times. But as long as the board is amenable when space is restricted or all that, but it sounds like to me, I'd just be worried if I had a small piece and wanted to put a pool, and now I can't grade the area and can't have a pool, or I wanna maintain, well, I guess not, maintain might be okay, I'm not sure yet. But put in a walkway to your dock at Demon Pond, or put in this and that. You know, the 25-foot no touch or 40-foot no touch would be very restrictive, I would say. But if it can be permitted, kind of alleviates the taking portion.
Some of the houses in Finn Park aren't, 50 feet from the water. They wouldn't be able to get out their back door,
Those are the ones that, I think we thought about very clearly of like, okay, those are, existing small lots, they are close to the water. These people are gonna do what needs to be done on their properties. And that's why that variance section is in there to allow for that.
That's if you make a change or something. If you've
That's if
got
you
a
make a
lawn
change.
down there
Yep.
that you're cutting already,
Correct.
which a lot of us do.
Yep, you're good. Yes,
Might be good.
you're good.
I like it, right?
The point that I was trying to make with the increasing from 25, this bylaw was for the future.
Yeah.
I wasn't looking at affecting anybody that quote is grandfathered.
Yep.
I just think because of what the town is up against with leftover property, that I really think going forward, the 30, 40 is more of a help to preservation of the town and making sure that our waterways and wetlands aren't damaged in the future. So that's my opinion.
And just so everyone knows, we did get a couple comments on the chat, which I'll just go over quickly. I think one person who's not here, Mike Peachwitz, I'm sorry. Saying that the board today is rational, but essentially kind of reiterating that we are volunteers, the board does turn over, a bylaw is forever. So our, opinions as members might change. They did state, I do not see the upside in the residents voting in favor of this new bylaw. So it's more than fair, I think it's like any board, it turns over. And I think that's kind of also the importance of having a bylaw is if you find, we keep hearing that this is, so important to residents. Well, if you have these kind of standard set of regulations where we have the benefit of being agnostic to personal beliefs, which is hard sometimes, but we have to go by, does this meet the regulations? And that's just the answer to it. So if it does meet the regulations, then you have a permit. If it does not meet the regulations, let's discuss how. Is there some sort of mitigation aspect? What do you need to do to comply? Can you get there? And it's a formal process, yes. But I've been on this committee too long, since 2016, so almost 10 years. And we always invite the public to come, talk to us. If you have a question, we'll come to you, you come to us. Obviously we have open meeting law requirements, we're not looking to mess those up, but you really wanna do something, you have a small lot, you have a hard lot, but you've had it, since the 1940s. Okay, well, there's obviously something that, we need to work on, let's try and find a solution. And I think that's something that, Joe Delaquila was the chair when I started, that he installed in me and Peter, and I hope in others that, we are a community. you know, we all believe that protection of wetlands and our other resources are important, but we're all residents at the end of the day, and we do wanna help. You know, we don't wanna be a hindrance, especially to the everyday homeowner. So have that conversation with us, but we do understand that we won't be here forever. And then Jared Foucher, it is a very broadly written bylaw, and you are right that with different unelected officials in place, they can make things very difficult for current landowners, and strongly recommends that everyone votes no, and they are 42 East Hill Road. So, yes.
I just wanted to counter to that first point. Bylaws in this town aren't forever, as we saw last fall when we changed the entire structure of how the government works in town. So we do have the ability at any time to come to the con or come up with a citizen's petition to change a bylaw. So I just wanted to put that out there
Thank you.
to the citizens.
Not that we like that, but yes.
And just to add, similar to Tim's point, but also to counter their concern that you guys will not always be the same ones on the board. I think that having the bylaw in place ensures that there is no ambiguity when other people come in to have the discretion to say, we're not gonna enforce any no touch zone, and then we're kind of in the same position that we're in now.
Makes it more consistent.
I've spoken more.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's tell 17 Maple Springs Drive. Beachfront down Maple Springs Drive is deeded in from Rice Farm, the whole beachfront area. So does that mean now if we wanna maintain that, we have to go get permits to maintain that beachfront, which is deeded to us?
It'll come down to what are you doing for maintenance?
Well, the stone wall, the wall at the beach, rebuilding that and putting the docks, we put a dock in every year. It's been doing that for the last,
Yeah, you put your docks in every year.
we put them in and take them out.
Yep, that's fine. As long as you're not, for the stone wall, if you're just putting boulders black and cementing them in place, you don't need a permit for that. If you decide you wanna build a whole new stone wall and make it into this fancy thing, then you'd need a permit, but you'd need one under the state regs anyways. So, yes, yep. Go ahead.
This may sound like a simple question. Harry Sackman, 13 Beechwood Drive. Madam Chair, if you could just explain to me the 100 feet and the 25 feet.
Sure.
Because you had mentioned earlier in the meeting that a vernal pool could be wet in the spring and then dry up. So if I'm looking at 100 feet, from what point do I gauge that 100 feet when it dries up?
Sure, so vernal pools, while they dry up in, the fall, summer, etc., they do kind of leave a distinguished pattern of water staining. And sometimes, it does require an application to wait, on a rare occasion. It goes off I think we put in the highest, mean annual water line for a vernal pool. So we basically, sometimes it's very clear to see from the water standing on the leaves around the edge where that water typically lies. But there, I'm sure will be a circumstance in which we have to say, okay, we have to wait till March, to act on this application, to come to an agreement, unless there's, a clear, kind of agreement on what that boundary would be, a reasonable estimation, and then 100 feet out. So for vernal pools, it's usually the highest water level mark, the median.
So it's not required I put little wire sticks with flags so I can identify where it is?
If you're submitting an application, typically if we're reviewing it for confirmation of the boundary, then yes, you would, or a surveyor or someone else would.
Within that 100 feet, is that a no walk distance? Is that a can't build, can't camp distance? What is that 100 feet?
100 feet just means any alteration within that 100 feet comes before the commission.
Okay.
The first 0 to 25 feet we have as a no disturb.
So it's not a quote, no crush, I could walk there, but I
Oh,
just
yeah,
can't, okay.
Just no, you can't destroy you can't cut trees down, you can't dig it up, etc. Unless you have a permitted variance for it.
What if you have a tree that's dying and falling down, Do you have to come get a permit? I mean, I've got a
Yeah.
few trees that I'm probably gonna take down before they fall down and hurt somebody, and it's because it's a dead tree.
So we have been dealing with those through administrative approval, so not a formal permit. Basically what we do is we request that citizens reach out to us, tell them we have a tree within the 100-foot buffer zone we'd like to take down because it's hazardous, because it's dying. We typically, at least one or two of us, we'll do a quick site visit, or if you provide photos, and then we just do a vote at one of our subsequent meetings so that you have paperwork, we have paperwork. That way if like a neighbor calls and says, hey, they're taking down trees in the wetlands, we know what's happening. Yeah,
And
but
just to add to that, the key to that, and this does come up
Hazard.
every so often, is as long as the stump is staying in place, you're not pulling it all out, cause that's where you end up with a lot of earth disturbance.
Yep.
And that's where we'd probably look for something more than just administrative approval.
Yeah.
If you're cutting it down, leaving the stump, leaving the roots as is, we can do it through administrative approval, it's a very simple process.
And as
that
long-
that does
yeah.
come up pretty often.
And as long as it's a hazardous dying tree,
Yeah.
if someone just wants to clear trees in their backyard, they need a permit for that. But if it's a life safety aspect, we find that very important.
Another quick question about which I wasn't sure and I didn't see in the bylaw, maybe I didn't read it well enough. The A zones for the water area, which is,
The floodplain?
yes. How is that affected? Cause there's the typical in those A zones, you can't put wells, can't build septic systems. How does this bylaw address that, or is that overridden by state law?
So under the Wetlands Protection Act, they are a protected resource area already. Under this bylaw, we are giving them a 100-foot buffer zone.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
One question about the security part, there's talks about bonds, conservation restrictions, easements, or other enforceable covenant. When is that typically intended to be used?
Very rarely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's standard language,
Yep.
but, is included, I forget, is that in the WP already? I think it is in a different kind of sense. So that might be something where we've never done one, let's put it that way. I would assume that if there is a large project with a large amount of wetland fill, that would be something that
For
it
sure,
would
you
be in
have something to
discussion.
cover if it
Yeah,
doesn't get
kind of like
finished.
what you would do with planning, some sort of bond.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's far more common with planning boards
Yeah.
Yep.
than with conservation commissions, and I'd say that's in general throughout the state.
Yep.
And then with the fines, what happens with the fine money? Does that go?
Goes to a revolving account. That the annual spend gets capped and approved every year at town meeting.
Gotcha.
So it would only be utilized for, mostly implementation of the bylaw. But if we, wanted to use some for our like open space properties that Concom owns, that might be something that we talk about. But it does require annual town meeting approval for a cap spending.
Thank you.
Question.
Yeah.
I know from the planning board, our enforcement authority is the building inspector. Are you guys the enforcement authority?
Yes.
For any fines or anything like that?
Yes.
Excellent. And I presume, I didn't see it in the bylaw, but you would come up with a fine schedule and such like that?
Yep, so that would be in our regulations, yeah.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Yeah, the state limits the cap at least for fines, but for like application fees, that would have a whole schedule in our regulations.
Thanks.
Are there any other comments, questions? I think we all so appreciate all of you coming out.
Thank you, absolutely.
All of the feedback is great. Alright. Just make sure, I don't think there's anyone else on Zoom, but if so, please feel free to speak up. Okay, great. Okay, perfect.
Do you want to, about the septic, Demi want to set up a date with us to talk or not?
I have some of their contact info, so between me and Tamika, we can reach out with Demon Pond and set that up, cause I think some of them left. I don't know who is your association chair. Who's the chair of the Demon Association?
President's name is John King.
John King too.
Okay.
He lives in Malden though, but he's reachable by
Okay.
email.
I forget.
I can provide you with the contact.
Yeah.
Steve reached out to you, I think,
Steve did, yes.
who's our treasurer.
Okay. Alright, yeah, so we'll, either myself or Tamika will reach out, and we'll facilitate something that works with your schedule. You know, if we wanna have maybe even a separate meeting, just to discuss Devon Pond issues. Can be kind of a non-permitting meeting. And yeah, we'll go from there. Thank you guys for coming. Okay, anything else on bylaw?
Excellent job.
Actually, do we know what's the next steps for us with the bylaw? This goes to.
Bylaw committee meets on the 13th.
13th, bylaw committee meets, yeah.
I did just wanna run through with you guys just to make sure I remembered all the changes that they wanted us to make before I send it back to them. Which I believe was just separating out this second paragraph to be authority.
Yep.
Changing the definitions, to, you know, not being all different. And kind of, the shall for them.
Yes, the consistent language.
The consistent language. And then I think really the other thing that they wanted was the severability, which we decided to keep in until town council reviews.
Yes, because we found that in the MACC
Yeah.
template and in pretty much every other municipal bylaw we found. Wetlands bylaw.
Yeah, and there was just one random typo that I fixed. Okay. And I changed all the section headers.
So once you make those few corrections, is the commission comfortable with me sending this to town council to begin their review process?
And or was there anything from tonight that makes you wanna change things?
Not as far as I'm concerned.
I don't have anything at this time, no.
Okay.
And just some food for thought for the board, I anticipate that either the select board or the town administrator may ask for a member of the commission to be in attendance at town meeting to answer any questions that come up, since you guys are the subject matter experts. It's Saturday, May 10th, it'll probably be at 6 p.m. Hopefully you'll be there anyways, but if you're not, just to keep in mind, if maybe between the six of you, you can figure out who might be able to come.
I'm usually there, so.
Okay, perfect.
Getting any crazy newborn stuff, I should be there.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess I'll just ask the board, are they amenable to increasing it from 25 to 30 or 40? Because I didn't hear that when you were going through it, and I
Yeah.
said, well, I'm gonna reiterate myself.
No, that's fine.
50 might be too much, maybe 40 is a good.
I'm with Tim on that too.
I'll share my opinion if you want.
Go ahead.
Personally, I'm amenable to a larger no disturb zone. In my own head, I try to balance it with what can we get approved through town meeting and town vote, and I think we do need to find a good balance there. I have no issue with taking that 25 and making it larger. It's just gonna help protect those wetland resource areas. My concern is as we make that larger, we have more and more people that might vote no.
Can I ask your thoughts on this, knowing procedures and votes and things like that? Thoughts on keeping it at 25, and down the road, you could do a second vote to increase it?
Absolutely.
Get the law in initially
Yes.
and not risk losing it altogether based on that number.
That's kind of, yeah.
Okay, I would rather have something than nothing, trust me.
Yeah, no, I think it's something we talked about a lot. And I think because we've been talking about this for so long, the importance of it has only increased in our minds, and during permitting, that we needed something, and 25 feet was definitely more than 0, which some bylaws don't even have a no disturb. So to kind of, and we even talked about even just putting the 25 feet only in the regulations, but I think came to a unanimous decision that we wanted to be strong and say, no, this is what it is. If it's in the bylaw, you know, I think to the point of even if commissioners changed, it's in the bylaw. So, you know, that is what it is. But I think, you know, as things progress, you always wanna keep up with your bylaws,
I'm
so.
good to get it passed, cause like I said, you can change it anytime that you want to.
So it's 0 now.
No,
It's 0.
25.
Well, under the state, it's 0 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there isn't anything in the Rutland bylaw that says it's 25 unless it's passed
Unless it's
this
passed.
time.
Yep.
We've had I'll call it an unofficial policy.
Yeah.
That we ask applicants to provide us a 25-foot no disturb zone. Some do, some
It's
give
been
us
usually adhered to.
10 or 15 feet. We'll take whatever we can get.
Yeah.
We don't have a bylaw to enforce it. That's what this would allow us to do. And again, case by case basis, there will be times where we say, well, it doesn't make sense for this site because, you know, you already have lawn in this area or whatever it might be, it's an existing condition. So those we would review on a case by case basis.
So I already have a lawn that's within 25 feet that gets cut down there.
Yep.
You say
There's
it, you
nothing-
stay. No, you're good.
No, well, you made it sound like it,
If you were proposing to do
To
something within
increase my
that
lawn.
25
Yeah.
feet, yes,
Oh, I see.
yes.
yeah.
This bylaw, just to say, it's, everybody's grandfathered in, it's moving forward that this bylaw takes effect. It's not anybody that's got something now, unless they wanna increase something, correct?
Right.
Yep.
One of the exemptions that the state allows for is things like fencing, things like that. I guess between that and the other things, for me personally, I'd like to see clarifications on the exemptions, preferably leaning towards most of the ones that the state already currently allows. But I could tell you if the exemption for maintaining a driveway is not clearly in there,
Yeah.
I would be pushing to not approve if it was my vote.
Personally, I think that is something we could put in the regs.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, could we do that?
Yeah, cause especially if it's activities within the buffer zone, I think that's something that, because I have agreement for especially like fencing, you know, things like that, I think would be better clarified in the regulations. On like, we have a section kind of like with the hazardous trees, like administrative approvals.
And one of your sections says that, other than stated in the bylaw, the exceptions provided in the Wetlands Protection Act shall not apply. Is there a reason why? Is there certain exemptions in the Wetland Protection Act that the board was looking to not have?
Yes, hold on. Let me.
My main concern with this would be if you did live on a pond, driveways, docks, things like that, just be able to maintain your area. And some of these are not even just maintain, you're allowed to do, like you can build a fence. That didn't exist.
Going line by line here.
Rain is just, is it just the minor activities?
Wanna keep using it?
Occasionally. Oh, I definitely would like to.
Page 6.
Okay. So I think part of it was like the conversion of lawn to accessory structures is not something we were looking to exempt, even if it's 50 feet or you know, so it's kind of like, they're all kind of sectioned under the minor activities aspect. In a, you know, under one section, which was a little bit difficult, I think. But I know that one came up.
So that's the conversion of existing lawn into dwelling or deck or structure?
Deck, sheds, patios, pools.
See, that sounds great to me.
Not so great.
That's our land.
You need a permit for it.
So it would be easier to do that under the current regulation without a permit to
I mean, you have to
expand
meet
your-
certain
Right.
regulations, but
if, with no bylaw in place, potentially could build a deck on Demon Pond within a certain area. But if we do add the bylaw, then
it
you
has to be
definitely
more
have,
than 50 feet away.
then you definitely have to get a permit. So in the 100 to 50 foot buffer zone, you could potentially build a deck without a permit.
Incorrect. In the
No.
50 to 100.
Yes.
Yeah, I said it backwards, but yeah, 50 to 100.
Yes, if you're more than 50, if you're more than 50 feet
More than
away,
50 feet away.
yes.
And you prove to us, you still have to come before us in some manner, because you still have to prove that it won't provide an impact, it won't do, so you still have to install erosion controls, etc.
Right.
Yeah. And if you're in riverfront, then they don't apply, you have to apply. You have to get a permit, I mean.
And I guess Demon Pond probably wouldn't apply to, well, it wouldn't require that, but you'd probably have to talk to some other agencies as well if you're
Yeah.
within 50 feet.
I think it's good to know too that even if we don't currently have all the minor activities listed in our bylaw, it doesn't mean we wouldn't allow those. It just, again, gives us a little bit more control to make sure things happen the right way. So if somebody did want to convert lawn to a patio or a pool or something like that, if we don't have any jurisdiction and they do the work and they put in no erosion controls and they tear the whole place up and you have turbid wetlands a week later, that's really what we're trying to avoid is those impacts to the wetlands. This just allows us to make sure that the work happens the right way, the wetlands are still protected. Doesn't mean we wouldn't allow it. It just allows us to have some control over the situation, so that we don't get a call and somebody says, hey, the wetlands behind this person's house looks like chocolate milk. And it's because they built a pool and they, maybe they were exempt, but they didn't also comply with the requirements of the Wetlands Protection Act, which you technically still need to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Even if it is a minor activity.
Right.
Yeah. I think that was part of the reason why we wrote that section of the bylaw that way. It's not that we're against those types of minor activities, it just allows us to be able to review them, essentially.
You guys don't want a bunch of impermeable surfaces right next to wetlands,
Right.
where the runoff just goes boom right into the wetlands.
I certainly would.
We've seen it.
Yeah, I agree. It's happened in town, but like I said, that's why I'm so for this bylaws, because we need to get something in place. So, excuse my language, you guys have some teeth. Guys and girls, I apologize.
No, it's fine.
I'm an old field engineer, so I'm bad.
Get it. Yes,
Madam Chair, quick question
sure.
for the member in the blue shirt.
Whoa,
Brian.
Oh, which blue?
Which blue?
changing my shirt.
Brian.
Royal blue.
What are the endangered species in a vernal pool?
So there's a number, there's a number of salamander species that are threatened or endangered. I don't know if we have any listed species in town, whether it's Jefferson, blue spot, or marbled salamanders, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist. I think Melissa's looking it up.
I'm trying to see if I can pull up the OSRP.
Well, it's just a quick question. I mean,
Yep.
I don't have to go through the whole encyclopedia, but
Yep.
I was just curious what the main were. Salamanders? Okay.
Yeah, it's primarily certain salamander species, turtles,
And invertebrates.
and invertebrates, yep.
Did the state
You
pull
can't
some
see.
off a few years ago, reduce that list, if I remember right?
Correct. Yep,
They did, okay.
yep, based
Thank you.
on population size and, yep.
We're the only ones here.
Oh, it's fine.
And our fairy shrimp, I know they're an obligate species, but they're not listed, correct?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, they're obligate, but I don't think it looks so. Okay.
Well, no, it's not written that way, so that's the thing I thought.
Any other bylaw questions?
Going once.
Going once, going twice. Alright. Okay, so we will, I think I've already made those changes, so I'll send you and the bylaw committee and upload the revised one. We're good with what we heard tonight, nothing further we wanna. I think the minor activities can be done in the regs.
I think so too.
That's a very.
I mean, they're in the regs now at the state level, right? 310 CMR 10
Hey, I
are
like the way you think.
They are the regulations.
Yes.
You know, that is not the act, those are the regulations, so makes sense to me.
I like that.
Yeah.
What a great
We'll
comment.
we'll have a lot of stuff to discuss for the regulations, so that can be one of them.
So I have the commission's permission to send it to town council for review?
Yes, I'll send you tomorrow.
Sure, the
The,
revised version.
Yep.
Yep.
We don't need to
Okay.
vote, do we?
no, cause I think we already voted.
I think we did,
Yeah,
right?
it's fine, it's fine.
Good.
It's fine.
Just
Okay.
making sure.
So the only other business is big night in Expo. How did
Yep.
last night go?
It went alright,
That was
we're going to
reassuring.
have, what was that, the 16th, March 16th, we're gonna have a book reading from an author who lives in Concord, about vernal pools and, you know, how they change throughout the seasons, and is geared towards kids from 4 to 8 years old. The children's librarian, Aislinn, is great, and she's excited about this. She'll have some craft activities to do with the kids and teach them about vernal pools and the species that live in the pools. And I'm trying to work on having some live animals on display at the same time, to get more people in there, but that's still pending.
So fancy.
So we'll see how that goes.
Awesome.
As far as Big Night, Glenda and I are still working on that, 'cause we're gonna tag team with Holden. So Holden will be up first, just because they're a little bit lower altitude and they warm up a little bit earlier. And then the second Big Night, will be in Rutland, so probably on Hillside.
Awesome. Do you need anything from us for now?
Not
We
yet.
gotta decide on the amount of money, did I see that?
Right, we do have to discuss the honorarium, whatever, the amount,
So
the
does she give
donation
us
to
an
her.
official invoice though? Because so the
No,
only,
it's a donation,
so the
really.
only issue I can foresee is that she needs to be a contractor with us, so we can't just donate through town funds.
Okay.
So that's kind of, that's where where I was getting to last time of like, I'm willing to put in my money to
Mhm.
chip in, cause I don't think we'd be able, if it's a donation,
Okay.
to use our budget.
The only other option, and correct me if I'm wrong, is if she'd be willing to complete a W-9 form
Yeah.
and submit it in the form of an invoice.
Okay.
If she's willing to do that, then we can process it through our regular warrant process.
Yeah.
And you guys would just have to tell me what number you were comfortable with, and then we would take it from the general fund.
Okay. And I reached out to the Friends of the library as well, to see if they could help contribute.
Cool.
So it's a little bit easier to,
Yeah, they can make,
yeah.
they make donations. Alright.
And then the Community Expo, we really haven't met on that yet, so.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you for fielding all the questions tonight, and when the bylaw, the final version will be the one at town meeting, is that gonna come out beforehand?
Yeah, so it's pretty much the only differences between the one that's posted and the ones that is getting sent to town meeting is the first section is being split in two. And the bylaw and the definitions are just more, the definitions aren't changing because like some of them start in shall and some like just start the definitions, those are just being fixed. But I think, can you get it posted tomorrow if I send it to you?
Yeah,
So it'll be on our page by tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, so no other changes from tonight's meeting, you don't think?
I don't think, so we were, while you were outside, we did talk about how probably the minor project exemptions, we would talk about in our regulations, which is technically where they are under the WPA too, under the regulations for that, so that's kind of
Why
where
would some exemptions be listed under the main bylaw and not all exemptions?
because they might not all apply, but that one specifically does for agriculture.
Right, so that's saying that if we vote this in, then theoretically, if my main concern is that I can't do these things that I can today, we vote this in.
Yeah.
And you don't go that route with your meetings afterwards,
That's fair.
that's not a guarantee.
I could say that that could be an accurate statement, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I'd really like to see that in. I'd be considering a vote of yes if it was that way. I wouldn't vote yes on it in its current state, but I appreciate the time you guys took today and
Thank you.
answering the questions.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too. Alright, this may be my last meeting. So, congratulations, Chair, you've been promoted.
Excellent.
I probably won't make it to the next one.
Alright.
Not ever, right?
Not ever,
Okay.
no, just for a couple meetings,
Just a day or two.
just a day or two.
You know,
I think this child's gonna come out before, so it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
so I'm giving you a reminder for the two unanticipated items, which were
Oh, yeah,
29 Barry Paxton Road and the email to try to set up a time on the culvert.
and that's why I told you to remind me.
I'm on it.
So Tamika, you said a W-9, right?
Correct.
Okay.
A W-9 and an invoice.
As the invoice. Or
They're they're two
and.
separate forms, but I can actually email you the town's copy of the W-9 form
Okay,
if
that'd
you
be
wanna
great.
forward that to her. And then whatever she would use as her form of an invoice that we can process.
We just have to come up with that amount that I can tell her to write the invoice for.
Correct,
Right.
yep, we just, the commission just has to decide what that dollar amount's gonna be. And I will say, so I know the event is on Sunday, our next warrant is the following day on the 17th. So unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to give that donation until after the event happened. So it's up to you if you wanna choose that amount now for processing on the next warrant, or if you wanna discuss it at the March 18th meeting, but then it wouldn't process until April 3rd.
Did we set a cap amount? I think we set a cap amount of like 200
From the commission itself.
from the commission itself.
Yeah, I was thinking if we're able to split with the Friends of the Library, I was thinking, 100 or 150 each.
Yeah,
And then that way, it's kind of right in the middle of her suggestion.
so I'm fine with a cap amount.
Yep.
Is everyone else okay with that?
Yeah, I would say just hit the middle.
Yeah,
So 200 as a cap,
200 as a cap.
Yep. or split for.
Would love to split for less.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just wait to hear from you, Brian,
Okay.
on what that number is. So I would need to know no later than next Wednesday, the 12th, in order to process it for that next warrant.
Okay.
Okay?
Alright, so we got a email about the Natural River Watershed Association meeting, holy crap, inviting us to an online meeting to discuss upcoming culvert assessment projects in town.
Glenda did indicate she wanted to participate.
Perfect.
I'll participate in that too.
Okay. I think it's important that Chris,
Yes.
whatever his availability is.
Yep.
So they said they would like to schedule this online meeting between March 4th and March 14th. I don't know how to give you good times.
I think they're fairly flexible, so I
Okay.
think of the members that wanna participate, if you can tell me days and times that you're available, I can coordinate with Chris and then get back to them on that. I can email Glenda
I would
to see what
assume
her
it'd
availability is.
probably be during normal business
I would assume during
hours,
work
yeah.
business hours. I don't know, is that an option for you, Tim, to do it during business hours? If
Yeah.
it's online?
Yeah, if I have enough notice.
Okay, is there, between now and the 14th, is there any particular day that's like a definite no-go?
The 11th is a no-go.
Okay.
I think that's a Tuesday, the 11th.
And any specific timeframes that are a no-go?
I would say the best thing is afternoon.
Afternoon's best for
Say
you?
that, except for the 11th.
Okay.
And then, yeah, otherwise just let us know, but I think Chris will probably be a good resource on that one.
Absolutely, I'll coordinate and then I'll get back to you and let you know, okay?
Perfect, thank you.
No problem.
The other one is we got the email about 29 Barry Paxton Road, about concerns. This one is, I don't know if you guys were on the board when we started talking about this. This is near Four Corners. It's next to the Fox Hill townhouses. Fox Hill? Fox Run, Fox Hill Run.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's
one?
Fox Hill Run.
Okay,
Yeah, I think you
perfect.
had them all.
So is that address correct?
I don't think so. I don't think it has an address.
Cause I looked up 29 Barry Paxton Road, and that property is a little further east on 122.
That's
So
the way we have it in our files.
Okay.
Cause when I looked up the RDA that we issued, that's what it was in our files, but,
Okay.
I don't think it actually has an official address.
yeah, I don't know how we came to that.
Cause that property, at least the one that comes up, is 29 Barry Paxton Road. I remember, I don't think that one came in front of us, but I remember it came in front of ZBA. Cause there was a developer looking to
Yes.
do something on that
That's
property.
correct, you're absolutely right. Yep, this other property is owned by Evan Sawyer,
Okay.
if that helps you look on the GIS.
Yes,
We did a site
that's what I
visit.
thought it
Yeah.
was.
Yes.
And then I looked up and I said, wait, that's not the same
Yeah,
property.
I
This
wanna
is
say
the
it was
wood
in the last
chips.
6 months or so, it was fairly recent.
Yeah, and the complaint is, so we had them remove the wood chips.
So it is the same spot.
So it
Same
sounds like
location.
it's the same spot, and then they are seeing construction vehicles being parked on site, stockpiling of materials and storage containers. Does anyone remember, I think there might have been one meeting that I wasn't at, I don't know if there was discussion, but last I remember, it was, and Tamika remembers, they had to submit an NOI.
And I remember Julian Vitruba was at the meeting,
Yeah.
and he had indicated he was
No
gonna work
help.
with him on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I remember too.
He did some work as more of an emergency.
Which was the removal of the wood chips,
wood
yeah,
chips
which
and
we were
that.
fine with.
Yeah, that was kind of his ideas and we agreed with it in the lieu of,
The NOI.
yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure you're right. Yeah.
And so I think, cause I think they had submitted an RDA, but I don't think we made a decision, I think they withdrew it.
I think you're right, because I think you had issued an enforcement order.
Yep.
If I'm not, and I think you ended up permitting him removing it under the enforcement order and didn't move forward with the RDA.
Yeah, cause we said, we'll let you withdraw this, otherwise we'll issue a positive, basically,
Right.
as long as you submit the NOI.
Yeah.
So I think you are correct, Tamika, in your remembrance. So do we wanna put out a little stickler and be like, hello,
Yeah,
where are you?
yeah, I think so.
We miss you, please come back.
A reminder,
Yeah,
this is what we talked about.
Would you like me to reach out to him and ask that he attend the next meeting and have this as an agenda item to get his side of the story, for lack of a better word?
yeah, and ask the status of the NOI. I mean, I would say
Yep.
give him as much,
Cause I remember him saying that he was leasing the property to a tree company
Yeah.
to park their vehicles there. But I'm sure you guys didn't have time to drive by, but the resident indicated that he was stockpiling like natural earthen materials, but also had those like temporary storage containers on the property as well.
yeah, and the file doesn't have a DOA, so I'm pretty sure we just let him withdraw it.
Yeah, I can look back in the minutes, cause obviously we would have documented the minutes, I just didn't have an opportunity to check before tonight.
Looks like it was like April or May of 2024.
I think there was, talking about storage containers, I think there was one already on the property, yeah, last time we walked,
It like
wasn't
came
there?
and went, yeah.
But I thought you guys told him he had to remove it.
I don't think so.
No?
Not the storage
Not that one?
container, no,
Not if it was by the road.
no, cause it was, yes.
Yeah.
It was in that gravel lot.
Yep.
Immediately adjacent to 122.
So if there's more than that, then it might be a different conversation in the
Right.
location, but yeah, cause I think we were more concerned about just the siltation from the logging trucks going up and down and the storage of the large trunks
Yep,
within the wetland, cause we wanted to know where the wetland was. That's, we were waiting for them because they were gonna do a wetland delineation.
that's right.
It's all coming back to
They
me
were.
now.
Okay.
Alright. So yes, get a status update, say, I mean, if you guys are comfortable, I'd say we need the NOI. They're past due.
We were expecting one.
We were expecting you. You have not fulfilled. Okay. Is there anything else for tonight? Okay. Probably won't see you for a couple weeks, so have a wonderful time.
You too.
Doing all the things that I wanna do but can't. And I'll send you that warrant article language too. I
Yes,
just wanted
thank
to
you.
look at like what past warrant articles and whatever others.
Absolutely,
It's
thank you for that.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. I'll be the one.
Second,
All those in favor by roll call?
Like I.
Bjork and I.
Keenan, I.
Gentilucci, aye.
Danza, aye. We are adjourned 7:51.